Welcome to my library, everyone. A very exciting setting for a very exciting video, if I do say so myself. May is literally knocking on our doors, and that means it's time for another Plan With Me video. Before I get into it though, I do want to say a huge thank you to Squarespace for sponsoring today's video. Squarespace, for those of you who don't know, is an all-in-one platform for building beautiful websites, online stores, and more. I actually just launched my own Squarespace site, so there's this new little corner of the internet for us to do more fun things. I'll be talking more about that and Squarespace a little bit later in today's video. I really wanted to create spreads this month that I felt like would be helpful during this time, and I'm really happy with how it all came together, so I'm excited to see what you guys think of the spreads. I don't really have much else to say, so I'm just gonna let Caitlin voiceover mode take over. For May, I decided to make the month at a glance a one-page situation. I started by writing May at the top in bold letters, which is something I've been wanting to implement more of in my journal because I think it can add a really fun touch, especially when you add some drop shadowing to it. Spoiler alert, you'll see it pop up again in another spread this month, so stay tuned for that. Below the title is where I designated spots for different elements of the month at a glance. On the top left is a spot to draw out a basic calendar. Even if I'm not going to draw out a full 2-page spread with the full calendar situation, I find including even a mini version like this one in my spreads is super helpful because I love referencing a calendar when making my weekly schedules. In addition to box headers, another theme you'll see in May spreads is more love for drop shadows. I have used drop shadows in the past, but lately I cannot stop making them. They're so easy to make and they can be a great way to incorporate color into a spread without taking over the page. You guys know by now that my spreads are typically more on the minimal side, and sometimes that results in colorless spreads. I would much prefer not to have that situation and have that pop of je ne sais quoi, you know? So this has been a really nice thing to incorporate. The bar at the right of the calendar is intended to be a space where I can record any main events that are happening in May. I can write the day of the month that the event is happening in the little boxes, or just use the boxes as a checklist. And then in the box at the bottom of the left page is a spot where I decided to do some doodling. I actually chose to doodle an image of a snake plant, and it was a really simple doodle to draw out. Plant doodles are great because they're just one of those doodles that come to life when color comes into play. So I whipped out a green Tombow in the color 098. It will be linked below along with everything else I'm using to create today's spreads in the description box below. I even added some splotches on the leaves with a Jelly Roll green pen just to give it more detail. Below the main events list, I added a quote that I actually talked about in last week's Paint With Me video. It was a video where I challenged myself to go into a paint session with no plans whatsoever on what to paint, so definitely worth checking out if you haven't already. The quote says, "Change is hard at first, messy in the middle, and gorgeous at the end." It's a quote by Robin Sharma, and one that I love so much that I needed to include it also here in my journal in this prime piece of real estate. Month at a glance spread is one of those spreads I visit the most often in the month, so it's always a great spot to put some inspiring words for me to feast my eyeballs on. Next is a special mood tracker. A few months back, I created a mood tracker where I included not only a spot to write down what my mood was each day, but also a spot to write something from the day that I thought influenced that mood. I really liked using that because I find mood trackers much more interesting to look back on when you have context. So I'm kind of doing the same thing here, but instead of making myself write an explanation for my mood every single day, I thought it'd be a cool exercise to make it more of a once a week thing, more reflective, because then once a week I can take a look at what I had been feeling and try and think about what the main influences were on my mood as a whole. I'm mostly structuring it this way because I found last time that although it was nice to have all that context, it was harder for me to keep on top of every day, and there was a lot of repetition, so I think this is going to be a much more realistic layout for me. Well, we're well into spring at this point, so the spread is a bit overdue, but alas, I am doing it anyway. It is a spring cleaning checklist. The way that I like to do my cleaning checklist is to break it down by room and then list out all the things in each room I need to tackle. So some things on my list are, for example, in my kitchen, I need to move my fridge and stove and give the floors a good vacuum and mop. In my living room, I need to clean my big windows. In my bathroom, I have to wipe down my shower stand that houses all my hair products and body scrubs because that gets really gross. And in my office, I need to clean out and reorganize all of the drawers. And that's just a few things. So it's quite the list I have to tackle, but I think breaking down each room makes it a lot more doable because then I can focus on a task or two a day once I'm back in my apartment, and hopefully it'll slowly but surely all get done. As you can see, I added a checklist column on the left side of each room section, so it'll be easy for me to mark tasks as they get completed, and then I'll also be able to easily see what still needs to get done. Surprise, surprise, I brought back some more drop shadowing. This time I opted for a black version, and this one is very simple to create with the basic black brush letter marker. You guys also saw me do this technique in the recent self-care bullet journal spreads video that went up. It's not as perfect as a ruler drop shadow, but I kind of like the crafty look that it gives when it's imperfect. And then I finished the spread off by bringing some line and circle confetti back. Confetti is one of my go-to decorative touches in my journal, and I feel like it was very much needed in this spread because I'm going to need that confetti energy to get through this amount of cleaning. I did say that there would be more block lettering, and what do you know? Here it is. This spread right here is a spot for me to outline my weekday routine. One of the things that's really been helping me feel some sense of normalcy is making sure my weekdays look different than my weekends. So my weekends are when I stay in comfy pajamas all day, when I watch movies and have binge reading sessions, but my weekdays are when I wake up at 7 a.m., get ready into something that's not sleep worthy, and get my work done. So I thought it'd be fun to create this weekday routine spread where I could designate different activities to different days of the work week. One of the most recent additions to my work list is to update my new website, which I actually created using today's sponsor, Squarespace. For those of you who don't know, I started my online journey back in 2014 with a blog, so I'm really happy that I now have another place on the web where I can share personal updates and new content in a written form. As an entrepreneur in the creative space, I also find it really important to have a hub where I can showcase my portfolio of work, whether that be videos or journal spreads. I was really impressed with how simple it was to put this website together using Squarespace, so it's definitely worth checking out. No matter what your passion may be, creating a site can be an awesome way to start building a community of your own. So if that sounds like a fun time to you, you can go to squarespace.com for a free trial and use the URL squarespace.com/Caitlin's Corner to get a special 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. Should have added the confetti here because that's pretty confetti worthy if I do say so myself. I finished off the spread by adding another quote at the bottom and added some green drop shadows to carry on the green color scheme from the previous spreads. The next spread is a spread that I am creating out of a dire lack of meal inspiration lately. I have been struggling to get creative in the kitchen, so I wanted to have a spot to write down some meal ideas for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So at some point over the next few days, I'm going to plop myself in front of the computer and just start looking aggressively throughout the internet for recipes to try. This wasn't a terribly complicated spread to create, but I think the added touches of greenery really ties it together with the weekday routine spread, so I was quite pleased with how it ended up turning out. When I finished with the meal idea section, I realized I wanted wanted to go back and fill in those block letters of the weekday spread because I didn't feel like the word routine was standing out as much as I wanted it to. And I cannot stress enough, I would have done yet another drop shadow if I didn't fill it in with black. So I'm glad this kind of adds some variety. Unfortunately lacked some brown shipping paper this month, but I still wanted to paste in paper into my journal, so I ended up ripping up a piece of graph paper that I had laying around and glued it to the top left corner of the left page. Not the most eye-popping paper choice, I will admit, but it's a subtle touch. You guys know that one of my biggest passions is reading. I've actually challenged myself to read 100 books in 2020, and I'm about 12 books ahead of schedule, so it's looking like I will be able to meet my goal. But to continue on my path to success, I wanted to put together a reading list spread with some books that I want to read over the next couple of months. Instead of just listing them out, I drew out 2 small shelves with book doodles where I can add the titles to the books that I want to read. I know a lot of you have been requesting more book content on the channel. I promise you more is coming. I'm planning on working on a video over the next couple of weeks, so stay tuned for that. And I think the blog will be a place where I can do some more bookish talk too. The spread was definitely one of the cutest ones I've done in a bit. I always love it when a spread can combine artsy with function, and I think this balances both really well. The grid paper was feeling a little plain though, so I added some to be read text on it and bordered it off and was much happier with it after I did that. Looking back though, it probably would have been nice to add some green paper here or something more colorful, but I'll just keep that in mind next time. The last spread, of course, is the weekly spread. I rarely go with a 1-page weekly spread, but I think this one will end up working really well because I have a box for each day of the week where I can write down the main to-do, special occasion, main event, whatever it is that you want to call it, of the day. And then below those boxes, there's a section for a weekly to-do list. So there's still room for more detailed planning. It just won't be assigned to each day. I also incorporated some habit trackers into the boxes above. The letters H, M, W, R, G represent hydration, meditation, working out, reading, and gratitude. And the 8th box is my dosage of fun for the spread because it's a spot for me to write down a word for the week. It could also be used to write down a simple quote or do a doodle. The last thing I added was a little cactus doodle to the bottom right of the page. Now, if you have a significantly lengthy to-do list, you could just ignore this doodle and use this real estate to extend your list. But I really wanted some cactus action in one of these spreads, so that's what I did. The plants in May spreads aren't in your face, but I think they add a nice little spring touch that I adore. I really liked all of the spreads I put together this month, but I feel like I have to say that the To Be Read shelf spread was definitely a favorite because of the setting that we're in today. That feels like it'd be wrong not to say that one. Be sure to let me know which spread was your favorite in the comment section down below. Thank you again to Squarespace for sponsoring today's video. Do not forget to check out that description box for a link that you can click and it will give you 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. Like this video if you enjoyed it, hit the subscribe button if you haven't already and the notification bell. And don't be afraid to let me know if there's any videos that you want to see, special requests for videos that you want to see in May. And Hazel, we'll see you all very soon with a new video, and until then, bye-bye. It's so weird to be back in here. This is where I used to do videos all the time when I had my book channel, and I would just stay here and do book hauls and this and that.